Yo, what's up guys? Neon Blitz here, back with another Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra video. Today we're going to be making another addition to one of my favorite videos. I love recording my Season 0 wish list. Today I'm going to be making my Season 4 wish list of characters that I want to see added to the game for Season 4 Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra. If you guys want to stay up to date with everything Season 4 related to Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to be notified of every time I upload, because if you want to stay up to date with everything Season 4 related, I'll be making videos of any new potential updates. That means any new codes, any new events, any new information we get to Season 4, I will be covering. So make sure to stay subscribed to the channel and stay up to date with everything with Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra related. Season 4 actually seems to be pretty exciting, which I'll get into for a bit. But before we get started, there's 3 things we're going to go over. 1, my rules. Last season, I had rules of, not wanting to do super hype tier stuff or super hyped stuff because... I could just make this list very boring, saying I want Blue Gogeta, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, Vegeta, Blue, Ultra Instinct Goku, and just call it a day. I want to try to have some varied picks, so I initially had a rule that I can't allow myself too many hype picks, and then last season we got Super Vegeta. So I'm saying, yeah, we don't really need to follow these rules anymore if they're going to give us these hype characters that quickly. Anyways, not that this whole video is just going to be those hype picks, but just going to throw that out there. Second, we have the background music that we've been listening to a lot for this channel from Stray McCall. I'll leave a link to this exact video in the description. Make sure to check them out. Make sure to give them a bunch of love because they do amazing work. And third, before we get into my actual list, I have an honorable mention of a character I've previously mentioned that I want in the game, which is Android 21. Now, can it be Lab Coat or Majin? I don't really want Evil in the game. I think if they just stuck to Majin, not transforming, or if they maybe did Lab Coat transforming to Majin, that'd be great. She could either be a damage character if she's Majin or technical Lab Coat, doesn't matter. I got into Dragon Ball through fighters, so I like 21 a lot, and I think we should be a cool addition to the game. With that, you already saw the thumbnail, so you already know who the first character is. It is Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Now, why did I say Season 4 it might be a bit special? Well, and the Genki Matsuri, the biggest Dragon Ball event ever, where they announced the return of Dragon Ball Super with the Galactic Patrol arc, the Mara arc, and the Dragon Ball Super Beerus, which is the Battle of Gods remake, as well as Dragon Ball Age 1000, which ended up being leaked to be something else. They announced for Squadra that they're going to be having their half anniversary during Season 4, which is going to be announced March 18th. Half anniversaries in gacha games, or in just mobile games in general, are very big. Dokkan, for example, one of the other Dragon Ball mobile games, they'll release very hype characters during their yearly anniversaries. That's where we've gotten Super Vegetas, that's where we've gotten Super Gogeta, that's where we've gotten Vegeta Blues, that's where we've gotten Gogeta Blues, that's where we've gotten Beast Gohans, that's where we've gotten Ultra Instinct Gokus. They typically save a lot of their premium hype picks for these anniversaries. So the fact that they've already explicitly said this is for a half-year anniversary means something pretty big and exciting is going to be coming. And considering the fact that this, is pretty red, kind of pinkish towards the center here, but mostly red, I think Super Saiyan 2 Gohan would be perfect for a half-year anniversary character. I'm surprised he's not already in the game. I thought this would be a base roster character. Maybe I'm just too fighters brain, where Super Saiyan 2 Gohan was one of the initial 6 characters revealed for the game. But Super Saiyan 2 Gohan's a very popular character, would get a lot of people excited. I think would work perfectly for a half-year anniversary, and I think waiting potentially 6 more months for Super Saiyan 2 Gohan is not smart. I think you have other characters that you can factor in for that. And considering they were already having a hint of red, obviously Super Saiyan Gohan, with the red line that causes him to transform, works perfectly. Now, as for what I would want him to do, I think it's obvious. He would be a transforming character. He would transform from Super Saiyan Gohan to Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. And we all know what his transformation would be. Oh, I'm trying to zoom forward. I apologize for that. I guess I won't be able to. I doubt we'll see 16's head being stomped by Cell, but obviously him crying, him being enraged, the red line behind him, and him going crazy with rage and transforming to Super Saiyan 2, the scene that we all know and love. That's what I'd imagine the transformation would be, and I'm sure it would look awesome in Squadra. So, here's Dokkan's interpretation of it. They don't do the red line per se, but they do red blinking lights. Obviously, we would see all of this. We maybe see him crying with the tears going up. I'm sure it would look great in game. Now, as for what I think he could do, I think for his skill 1, it could be a simple just Kamehameha that he does against Cell, where Cell's up in the sky and Gohan's just looking up and does Kamehameha against him. Now, I think this could work very interesting, where instead of just being a basic Kamehameha like Super Saiyan Goku's or even Super Saiyan 3 Goku's, I think this would be kind of more of like a counter Kamehameha, where he's either has his energy defense up when he's using it in the Antithesis kind of state, or he could be immune to Ki Blast attacks and counter and do a lot of damage with his Kamehameha of his own. I think that'd be pretty interesting. Would it be very strong? Yes. But it's Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. We already know when he's going to come out, he's going to be absolutely busted. We know this. Or if they don't want to do a Kamehameha, they could just do a Masenko. I think Super Saiyan 2 Gohan would have a beam of some sort. Either a Masenko or Kamehameha. Doesn't really matter. I think he would have a beam in some place. And I think, beams are just very easily, very beginner friendly, because they would want Super Saiyan 2 Gohan to be beginner friendly. I mean, look at Broly. Broly's a very high popular character, and he's pretty easy. He's one of the... According to Squadra, he's on the lowest. No, he pretty much has no difficulty to play at all. So I'd imagine for Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, they maybe want him a little bit more difficult just to have more complexity. But I imagine it'd be pretty easy, so having a B would be pretty easy. Now, I do not think we would get BoJack movie Gohan as a separate character. I think they would just kind of combine both the BoJack movie Super Saiyan 2 Gohan and the Cell Saga Super Saiyan 2 Gohan into one kit. So with that in mind, I think one of the moves that Super Saiyan 2 Gohan would have would be this kind of big punch that he does to kill BoJack. I think it would be work well. It's like a simple mobility, but also maybe he could combo after his Kamehameha, and you'll get the cool scene of him hitting the punch, doing this whole thing. I think it could work pretty well as a combo tool. That could be a cool finisher. I think it would be just a great thing to kind of combine both of them and not have to take up space for two Super Saiyan 2 Gohans. For his next skill, I think having a little bit AoE would be good. So I think the attacks that he did against all the Cell Juniors, I think it could work pretty well. Maybe it's just a big circle. If it's in the circle, they get hit with his combo, or maybe it's a bit of CC that if he can punch someone initially, they'll get stunned into like these two follow-ups, so then he could do his Kamehameha afterwards into the BoJack punch. Who's to say? But I think this would work well and fit well for Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. And then obviously for his ult, we already know what his ult would be. It would be the father-son Kamehameha. Now, I do think they might introduce another mechanic into this. It's going to be really similar to the game was for once his max rank. Maybe that's when Gohan and Goku give their burst of energy to actually kill Cell, and it'll make the ult super big and do a lot more damage and extend the duration of it. Because this basic super, or not basic, just the regular father son Kamehameha would look great, but then they can have this as like the max rank, where it's like the super push one time only, and just go crazy with it. I think it'd do well, and I think that'd be great. Now, for skins and cosmetics for Gohan, I think an intro could be for him as when Goku gave up at the Cell Games, and Gohan kind of comes in after. I think that'll work as a great intro. Maybe they could also do Goku and Gohan maybe walking out of the hyperbolic time chamber. That could work, but I think they would rather go with this. Gohan essentially walking in, still Super Saiyan, because you're starting out the battle as Super Saiyan Gohan. I don't know if he would take off the cape because of something I'm going to mention, but yeah, recreate that shot I think would look great. Then, as for his skins, or I guess before we get to skins, we can talk about his MVPs. I'd imagine this would be his MVP. Him on the ground, exhausted after killing Cell. I think that worked great as an MVP. Maybe him falling down, laying down. We already see characters falling with Kefla's legendary MVP, where you see Khalifa and Kale defuse, and they're on the floor and they still cheering. I think that'll work well for Gohan. For skins, he actually has potential for 3 skins. So of course he'd be in the iconic purple Piccolo fit, but I think a skin for him could be the kind of Turtle School fit they wore during the BoJack movie. I think that'd be an easy skin to do and would make a lot of the players happy. But then of course you have him with the actual cape on that Piccolo has, and the damaged battle suit that Goku and him were wearing when they left the time chamber. I think all 3 of those could be great skins. I mean, it's Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, so these would be immensely popular. Imagine this as a skin. That would be great, and considering they already have it as a skin for Piccolo, I think it'd be very easy. And they also have the battle armor for Kid Gohan, but this would be more damage, because we know they love their damage skins. I mean, look at Bardock. He just released with pretty much his basic default look, but it's just damage. They love these skins for some reason, so that's 3 skins they could do right there. I don't know. They would not release all at the same time. I'd imagine his launch skin would be with the cape. I think it's just too iconic. It would look too cool in game. But they could eventually go back to Bojack and maybe this broken Saiyan armor outfit. As for his finisher, I would imagine his finisher would be like the hard punch that he does against Cell to force him to spit out Android 18 and revert back to semi-perfect. I think that would look incredibly well. And just imagining, you know, Gohan just walks up to you, gives you the hard punch like right in the gut, and then you just go flying. I think that would be great as a finisher, and I think it worked. You know, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan would also be a damage character. I probably should have mentioned that first. So it could also break up the fact that every other Gohan so far in the game is a technical character. I do not see a world where Super Saiyan 2 Gohan is anything but a damage character. If he's somehow a technical character, something must have went wrong. Has to be a damage character. So with that's going to be my first character I want for Season 4 of Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra. Now let's get into the next character that I want. And my next character that I want for Season 4 is going to be Super Saiyan God Vegeta. You know, I've had a decent amount of comments actually saying they want God Vegeta as damage, and I agree with them. God Vegeta is an awesome form. You know, the fact that we saw it for the first time in the Broly movie, and it just looks so good on him, especially with the shade of red that they use. For me, it all depends on the shade of red that they use for God, if I like how it looks or not. If they use like a more pinkish kind of red, I don't like it as much, but if they use kind of like a darker red, like how it looks in the Broly movie, it looks amazing. But God Vegeta as damage, you know, I just had Super Saiyan 2 Gohan as damage. Now we're having God Vegeta as damage. You know, one of the biggest things that I want for this game is to kind of break from this, not rule that they've had set up, but not stereotype, but kind of mold that they've had so far with the game, where every Goku has been damage, every Vegeta has been tank, and every Gohan has been technical. You know, I really want them to start breaking that up. So having a damaged God Vegeta would be awesome. Having a damaged Super Saiyan 2 Gohan would be awesome. And if you saw my Season 3 wishlist video, which I'll leave a link in the description, I said I wanted God Goku as a technical. So I think that'd be awesome. You know, having God Goku as technical, the lane with a damaged God Vegeta on top, I think that'd be awesome. Now, as for what God Vegeta would do, unfortunately, there's not a lot to go off of, and I'm saying this right now, I do not want this to be a transformation to Blue Goku, or Blue Vegeta. I know he goes Blue Vegeta in the movie, but I think you can save a Blue Vegeta for a Super Saiyan Blue Evolution of Evolved Vegeta, or even just a standard Blue Vegeta just flat out, where that one can maybe do more Gallic Gungs and Final Flashes. God Vegeta has very kind of unique attacks that I will want represented in the game. You know, obviously he has his kind of special version of Big Bang Attack, you know, with this clear balls. And it's really unfortunate because the gacha games don't really use this form enough. You know, Dokkan only really has 2 forms of God Vegeta, and the other one of them is attached to a Goku and Vegeta card. You know, they see all this Prominence Flash, or Bang Bang Attack, whatever. That would be a cool attack to have. You know, as for some of his other attacks, you know, he has a bunch of combo attacks that he did against Broly. You could even take some of some of the moves he did in the fight with Broly when he's Super Saiyan and base Vegeta. I don't know why the super attacks are not loading. That's a transformation. So, you know, you can have Prominence Flash, you can have Big Bang Attack, he can have some of this combos attacks that he does with Goku. You know, what did this move, Divine Dance of Fire, just by himself. You know, God Vegeta needs more representation in these games. It's a sick form. I think it would work perfectly as a damage form, considering he didn't really tank that well against Broly till he went blue. You know, he's holding his own, but once Broly started powering up, he kind of dipped. I guess they do call it Big Bang Attack, and it'll be different. I mean, we have like Super Kamehameha from Super Saiyan 3. We have Kamehameha from Super Saiyan Goku, so having 2 different forms of Big Bang Attacks is not the craziest thing. But I think having a lane of a damaged God Vegeta, a technical God Goku against an eventual damaged Broly would be awesome. And then obviously you still have the technical Frieza, so you can basically soft recreate the Broly movie in game. Would be awesome. Now, as for his legendary cosmetic or legendary intro, I think him kind of like transforming into God would be perfect. You know, I'm not going to show the clip from the movie, but we know how he transformed to God. They could also do this simple transformation that they did for Dokkan. You know, simple transformation like that, I think it would look great. Or if they wanted to do the movie transformation, that worked well. As for skins, I mean, come on. You have to give God Vegeta the green coat that he wears at the beginning of the movie. Think it'll look awesome. Here's even some more attacks that they could pull from the Broly movie, you know, when he's first base Vegeta, then maybe going Super Saiyan. I think there's enough of Vegeta from the Broly movie itself that's not just Big Bang attacks, Final Flashes, Gallic Guns, that you can pull from to make God Vegeta really feel unique. But you would probably have to pull from his fight against Broly when he's base Vegeta and Super Saiyan Vegeta for it to really work. But I think it would be great. I don't know what his MVP or ouch or finisher would be, but I think God Vegeta would be awesome, especially his damage. I know there's Majin Vegeta, which we'll probably talk about later down in the line, but I think God Vegeta works out perfectly. So with our 2 damage characters out the way, let's start talking about the next 2 tank characters that I want for the game. For my first tank character that I want for Season 4, it's actually gonna be Jiren. You know, you gave us God of Destruction Topo for Season 1 of the game, which I get it. You know, you're still coasting off of the initial release hype. You don't need to initially release crazy characters for DLC or to keep the game going. But it's still a crazy pick to put God of Destruction in during Season 1. And for 2 seasons, we haven't really gone back to Universe 11 at all. Considering there's probably only 3 characters you could really add, which is Jiren and Dispo. You know, I would imagine this will be technical, so Jiren is a tank. And considering, when I think of Jiren, he's one of the biggest examples of a tank in Dragon Ball. I mean, he was untouchable at first. Then he was tanking, you know, Blue Evolution Vegeta attacks. He was taking Ultra Instinct Goku attacks. And he got eliminated from Goku and Frieza teaming up. If that's not the definition of a tank, I don't know what is. And plus, if he is a tank, he could then lane with Topo, which I think will work well. You know, Topo's already bulky. I imagine Jiren would also be pretty bulky, but do a lot of damage. The 2 could work together. I think it would work out pretty well. So as for what Jiren could do, you know, I'm going to have to pull up Dragon Ball FighterZ to reference this, but, you know, maybe for his intro, it could be him waking up from, not waking up, but him, you know, opening his eyes from meditating and going into battle. I think that worked out pretty well as an intro. For his skill 1, I'd imagine it'd be this kind of the, like, not destructive disc, but the like heat disc that he does. Just a simple projectile. I think that worked out well. I don't know if he would have counters like this. I know that's kind of a big thing in fighters that he has, but Topo already has a counter. They could do it. That could be the Universe 11 thing as counters, but I don't know if they would. You know, if they really wanted to, they could just have him do like a flurry of punches, maybe some. You know, they have that heat disc. Maybe they could do the way he eliminated that like blue guy from the Tournament of Power with like him throwing the Ki Blast up. I think it might be here in the Dokkan animations. I'm not too sure, but I think that'd be pretty cool. Just long range projectiles, and he would be transforming. It would be a transforming Jiren into full power. Yeah, like what if it was just this for like one of his skills? But it would be transforming into a full power Jiren. You know, I think it's just easy enough to do a transformation. I mean, you just gotta rip his shirt off. And they could just recreate this whole thing with him with the fire. I think it would work out pretty well and really showcases more tankiness pretty well. Give him more health, stats, blah, blah, blah. As for some of his other skills, you know, I imagine he'd have like a big punch. You know, he has this big punch of fighters. So I'd imagine that maybe might be a skill 3. If we're going to say skill 2, yeah, this attack, that could be a skill 2, or if a counter, if he has it, either one. Then for his ultimate, he could do this big punch to start it, but what I'm imagining, oh, he spoiled something, my bad. What I'm imagining is, it's a big circle, he does the punch, and a big circle around Jiren spawns. And anyone in that big circle is taking a bit of damage over time, because it's going to be like a big fire circle, because that was one of the biggest things Jiren did, is like put fire everywhere because he was just so hot. So it's either, and then he could get big buffs during that in his ult when during the circle. So it's either you fight Jiren in his ult where he's massively powered up and you're taking damage over time from the fire, or you run away from him, which I think works pretty well from a tank ult perspective. You know, we have something like Cell's ult where he has this big circle to block energy attacks, and you want to run away from it, because if you're stuck in it by the time it runs out, you're going to be stuck in there 1v1ing the Cell with your team mostly not being able to help. There are ways to help, but mostly not being able to help, right? So I'd imagine it could be a similar ult to that, but instead of just blocking energy attacks, is more massively buffing Jiren and doing more damage over time. I think that'd be a great ult for him, you know, proving your strength in a 1v1. Maybe not in 1v1, but proving your strength, seeing if you can't break him down at his absolute strongest. I think that worked perfectly well for Jiren. As for skins, I think there's only one easy skin that it could be, and I already spoiled it. Throw Jiren in a suit, bro. You gave Topo a suit? Let him be the suit brothers. Let him be, be the executives of the game. I think it would look pretty funny to have Jiren in the suit. Topo already looks really silly with it, so to imagine a suited Topo and a suited Jiren dominating, let's say, bot lane. Sounds really funny to me. And another thing that I thought of while I was making this, I think they could actually introduce a new Universe 11 helper. We kind of saw this with Dragon Ball Legends with their supporter system, but they could introduce their God of Destruction Belmod as a helper. Now, I think this would be fine. I know Belmod could show up as a God of Destruction, but I can't imagine that really means too much. I mean, it's a helper. Those helpers are really small. Are you really going to confuse the small little Belmod to the big Belmod at the tower as a God of Destruction? I don't think so. And considering, Beerus is also there, we're going to eventually get a playable Beerus. So, I don't imagine those are going to really do much or really signify who and what can't be characters. So, I think having Belmod as a helper would be cool. I mean, we have Kaba as a helper for Universe 6. So, having Belmod as a helper for Jiren and Topo, I think would make a lot of sense. Here's another alternate art that he has of Legends. In Legends, he just yaps. He just talks a lot. I think he would actually apply some buffs, like, I don't know, maybe applies more tank stats or more damage or something. I don't know what role he would be, considering, tank and how damage have different helpers. Maybe he can help out tank and he'll just talk a lot and apply fear to someone. I don't know. But I think it'd be cool to have more helpers in the game. They've only really introduced a couple since the launch of the games. And if they're going to introduce Jiren, I think Belmod as a helper would make a lot of sense. With that, we're going to go into my second tank that I want added. Alright, my next tank that I want added for Season 4 is actually Android 16. Now, I know he was a playable boss during Project Multi, the very first beta, the open network test, which is on during the weekend, the second beta for the game. He was a boss for Season 0, Season 1, Season 2, but they actually replaced him as a boss for Jackie Chun in Season 3, which is very interesting. We've never seen that for the game. So it makes me think, why would they take him out as a boss unless they're planning to add him as a character? And considering, I'm saying Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, I think releasing Android 16 with Super Saiyan 2 Gohan makes a lot of sense. In addition, we already have Android 18 in the game as Damage. We already have Android 17 in the game as Technical. And releasing Android 16 as Tank, I think would make perfect sense. Fill out the trio. I know Android 16 may not be pretty exciting for a lot of players, but I think just filling out that trio, I mean, yes, you can't already run a full Androids team, Cell as Tank, Gammas and 18 as Damage, and 17 as Technical. But, you can't fill out the Cell Saga trio of 16, 17, 18. And I think 16 being the Tank makes a lot of sense. He had like half his brain missing, or have like his head broken off. It's still going around. He looked very bulky. I don't think he wouldn't be a Damage. I think having this trio be Tank, Damage, Technical would make a lot of sense. As for what he could do, it's very interesting because he did not do a lot, but he's pretty prevalent and he's a fighter's character, which is very surprising. I don't know if this would be his ultimate, but I think Hell's Flash would make a lot of sense. Maybe it's just like something like a Ultimate Gohan, where it's like a big circle like around him that does damage. Maybe it gives us some stats. Who knows? Hell's Flash is interesting because in fighters it's his level 1, which is like his basic ability, but then it's also his level 3, which is his ultimate. It's just one's more dramatic looking. His level 3 is this, while his level 1 is like just the beginning part of it. I think another thing you could also have is a rocket punch. Maybe he could be a tank with a lot of more projectiles. So considering, we have like someone like Cooler who has a laser, but we don't really have characters like a tank that's like mostly projectiles. Not that I think 16 would, but I think it's just interesting to have that you can either do his rocket punch or his Hell Flash, either as a basic ability or ultimate. Then as for his intro, which I know I'm skipping around the place because 16, I imagine we'll have a lot of that. His intro will be him, kind of waking up from the machine when 17 and 18 freedom. I think this will work out as a good intro. As for his MVP, I'm not too sure. I don't even think he would get it like Bulma or Capsule Corp skin, because it's very similar to his basic outfit. They just basically put a piece of paper over the red ribbon and slap the Capsule Corp logo on it. But if they make Hellslash a basic ability, I think a very interesting one, again, this is where my fighter's brain is coming in. His kind of move that he did against Cell, where he tried to self-sacrifice himself, but Bulma removed the bomb. What if, the bomb's not removed, which he has in Fighters, where in Fighters, if you land this attack, it is a one-shot kill guaranteed on the enemy. This is in a combo, which you're not normally supposed to do, so here's probably why it doesn't one-shot. But if you land this by itself, you one-shot the enemy. And shout out CD Mangaka for the video, because I could not find a footage of Andrew 16 ulting by himself. It's not in their trailer. Now, this does leave 16 in Fighters with 1 health. So you get hit once, he's dead. But you're still technically alive. They could maybe do something similar in Squadra, where maybe that's his all, where he loses a bunch of health, but he grabs someone. And it kind of works like Kid Gohan, where Gohan would slam into them, keep him stunned for a couple seconds. What if 16 grabs someone? The whole team would get damage. It was a big CC. And then 16 would blow up, giving up a bunch of his health. And he could die from it if you're not smarter. But, he's holding someone down for such a long time that hopefully your team can kill him. I think that worked out pretty well. And considering he had, he would have some range because of Rocket Punch or Hellslash. I'd imagine he'd have like pretty melee attack range. Maybe he could do some of the attacks he does comboing with 17 and 18 as they've shown of like in Dokkan. I think it'd work out really well. And considering they made 16, they got rid of 16 as a boss, it makes me think they're planning something with 16. Who knows what? Who's to say? But if they're gonna release a Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, I think 16 as a tank would make sense. Imagining, you can still do, you could do 16 and Super Saiyan 2 Gohan together. You could do Super Saiyan 2 Gohan and like, I don't know. I was gonna say Trunks and Goku with all damage. So yeah, doing 16 and Gohan, I think that'll be a cool line. And considering they got rid of him as a boss, him as a tank feeling would work perfect sense. Now we're getting into the final role of this game with technical. Alright, and for my first technical character, I want Fusion Zamasu. Now, I know this is a bit of a weird pick. I would imagine when most people would think Fusion Zamasu, they would imagine him as a damage character. But hear me out. You already have Zamasu in the game as a tank. We know when eventually Goku Black gets out of the game, he's going to be damaged. It's the only role that makes sense for him. And especially considering Zamasu is a tank, you would want to run Goku Black and Zamasu together. So that's already two people right there of like the Dragon Ball Super Future Trunks arc. What if we went further ahead and made a full team around it? Because I truly think you can. Well, I would think Corrupted Zamasu, which Dokkan calls Fusion Zamasu, I don't know why, but Corrupted Zamasu with like the purple arm, I think could be a bulky damage dealer, kind of like Toppo and Broly, where they're big bodies, they have a lot of health, they're supposed to be mostly melee range. I think it would make a lot of sense when Goku Black can maybe be firing more Kamehamehas, maybe some scythes, who's to say what Goku Black would exactly do. So then how do you fill out the rest of the team? Well, you make Fusion Zamasu a technical character. And to me, it also just makes sense, this whole being talking about, I'm a god, I'm so much better than you mortals, need to die, all that. I think him being a technical, not in a traditional support sense, but a technical debuffer. If you look at all the technical characters in the game, we have your general healing technical with Majin Buu. You have your area control technicals with Krillin and Zamasu and Frieza. You have your general support technical characters with Kid Gohan and Android 17. Kid Gohan providing more general buffs and crowd control, while 17 is providing more shielding support. Then you have your playmakers with Hit and Ultimate Gohan, using their big amount of crowd control and damage to essentially make plays and be initiating. And then Gotenks is kind of like a general mismatch of all of them with his air control with his ghosts, playmaking with his potential skill 2, skill 1. So we don't have a really traditional debuffer in this game. I think Fusion Zamasu as a debuffer would make a lot of sense. They have already experimented with debuffs. Kid Gohan skill 3, this used to debuff the enemy. Yeah, it still says it right here on the website. While enemies are afflicted with energy defense down, they got rid of this. Because it used to work on bosses, and you would just melt bosses instantly. It was unfair. And you could just absolutely one-shot people with this up. So I don't imagine it would be as strong as this was. But I think, Fusion Zamasu all about debuffing and showing why he's so much superior to the mortals makes a lot of sense. As for what he could do, I think one of his abilities would be Holy Wrath, you know, the kind of like fire grenade that he throws off. If enemies are hit by this, they might get massively slow, they might have lower attack, they might lower their defenses, you know, max rank could get big range. Maybe you could have the second part from actually exploding it, like Ultimate Gohan skill 1. Who's to say? I think his next ability could be, I'm not lost over the place. It could be, Blades of Judgment. I think, where am I? Is this it? Where, you know, it could be a decent amount of area control, where kind of think like a Frieza cone, like that would spawn behind them with all the blades, and it could do a lot of damage. And maybe, who knows, if you're in the Blades of Judgment, it could be like also like Piccolo's Hellzone Grenade, where not Hellzone Grenade, or yeah, Hellzone Grenade, where if you're in it, you're massively slow, you're doing less damage, less defenses, and you can maybe use some movement abilities, let's just say, you know, really lock down the enemy down. Then maybe his skill 3 could be a general buffing school or tool for him. You know, him talking about how he's so much better than when he's the godlike, most perfect being in the universe, whatever. And then his ultimate, I think, can only be really one thing. It's Lightning of Absolution. You know, him summoning the bird behind him. Maybe he could do a bunch of crowd control. Like, enemies hit by it get stunned for a second. Maybe lowering their defenses dramatically. To maybe that Kid Gohan level, because I think it being an ultimate makes a lot of sense, especially considering it would have range while Kid Gohan's didn't. I think it would work perfectly for Zamasu or Fusion Zamasu, and it will allow you to run a full fusion or Dragon Ball Super Future Trunks team. You know, Zamasu as tank, Goku Black, and Corrupt Zamasu as damage, and Fusion Zamasu as technical. As for some of his cosmetics, his intro, it'd be Goku Black and Zamasu Fusion. I mean, we have a legendary intro of Goku and Vegeta fusing into Vegito. We have a legendary intro of Super Saiyan 2 Kale and Caulifla fusing into Kefla. I think Fusion Zamasu having an intro of him fusing into Fusion Zamasu, or Goku Black and Zamasu fusing into Fusion Zamasu makes perfect sense. As for what his MEP could be, maybe it's him like destroying something, you know, proving that it's worth, maybe just talking a bunch. Who's to say? As for what skins he has, I don't really know. I think you kind of just stick to the design. At best, you maybe give him this kind of Kai fit that Goku Black had when he first swapped bodies with Goku Black. At best, if anything, you just kind of stick with this fit. You know, it's already different enough from Zamasu fit, especially with the red. And I don't know what other skins you would give Zamasu, but with that being said, let's get on to the final character I want added for Season 4 Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra. And the final character I want added for Season 4 is Super Janemba. That's right, I have him as a technical character and not a tank, which not only it surprises me, because I initially had him as a tank, but after reading some concepts online and even thinking about it, and so I was noticing a weird trend. I'm putting Super Janemba as a technical character. Now, I do think this would just be a Super Janemba. I do not think we would play as this big yellow fat Janemba. I think it'd just be Super Janemba. So, I'd imagine maybe this, his intro would be him actually transforming into Super Janemba. Maybe it could be this. I don't know if they would animate all of this, but I think it would look cool as an intro. You know, just having him actually transform. Maybe you're doing a scream. Yeah. As for why I have him as a technical character, if you look at the roster for the game, there's actually a interesting thing that they've been doing where they're actually been kind of building a movie bosses team. We have Cooler as tank, we have Bojack as damage, and we have Broly as damage. But if we look through all the technical characters, I mean, we just saw him looking for my Fusion Zamasu, Ultimate Gohan, Go Tanks, Hit, 17, Frieza, Gohan, Boo, and Krillin. There is no technical movie bosses. What better character than Janemba, who does all this weird stuff during the Fusion Reborn? You know, maybe, you know, if we're having Zamasu as the technical character, maybe having Janemba as the more tanky character, just more weird crowd control stuff that nullifies the enemy stuff. What do I mean by that? You know, what if he had an ability where if he gets hit with a Ki Blast, he can do this to nullify it and stun the enemy? I think that'd be pretty interesting, you know, punish people for doing something. You know, maybe you can have an ability here where he can stun the enemy with his teleports. When he does like the big slams like Pycon's head with his two fists. We're about to get to it right here. This attack where he goes up to someone and slams their head. That could maybe be a stun. Maybe one of his abilities is a teleport. He'd be pretty mobile. One of Janemba's biggest things is how crazy his abilities are with the teleport, like building the blocks, the portals, and all that. Maybe he could have a long range ability with his lightning sword rare. Lightning, I forget exactly what it's called. This lightning shower rain. This is his level 3 in fighters. Maybe he could also have his grab. What if I didn't even think about that. What if he had a hook? If you're not familiar with what a hook is what if Janemba could extend his arm, and if he hits you, he'll bring you all the way to him. It's a very common thing in MOBAs. One of the most popular characters, Blitzcrank from League and Thrush. These are characters that if they hit you with their hook, they would bring you to themselves and essentially to your whole team. So you would have to be very careful, imagining Janemba can stun, he could teleport, he could hook you in. Maybe if they don't want to go down that route, maybe they can just give him this kind of shower rain that he does right here to maybe some range. And then what if his ultimate, this could be his ultimate if they wanted to, but he would use his sword as his melee to rush attack. But what if they made it like his ultimate, where he could go into this different stance and have all these different sword attacks? Maybe what if this was his ult, just straight down the middle, does damage, maybe slows down the team a bunch, and makes it theoretically very easy for him to actually hook someone in. I didn't even think of that hook initially, but once I saw the animation, I think it worked pretty well. Him stretching his arm to hook someone to bring him to your team. Imagine that you're positioning well. Your team is kind of scared to start a team fight, or you're just trying to secure a boss and the enemy team's looking to steal it. Janemba stretches out his arm, grabs on, let's just say a KO, brings KO to the enemy to your team, and then maybe he stuns him with the Pycon fist. Let me go back here. Go back to this where Janemba could then stun KO with the two fists like against Pycon's head. And then while the whole time the enemy team's just killing your team's just killing KO. I think that would be pretty well. Then if Janemba needs to get out, he has his teleports, or he can ult to start a team fight, big range that was massively slow to the enemy team, making it easy for him to get a hook. I think that'd be great. I didn't even think about the hook initially. I think that's technical, makes a lot of sense. And yeah, and I think it worked out well considering, imagine Janemba hooks someone, Cooler would then grab him with his Death Chaser, even more stuns. What if it brings someone into Bojack ult, or into his Cosmic Bloom Galactic Busters combo, his skill 1, skill 2, maybe even it has a Psycho Thread. What if it brings someone into Broly's ult? Or it gives him in range for Broly to use his Gigantic Stomps. Or even his Gigantic Knuckle. A hook is very good in MOBAs. Being able to just catch someone out of position, bringing them to you, and pretty much guaranteeing a kill, it is very strong, and I think Janemba would fit that perfectly. And considering, we have Cooler, Bojack, and Broly as in this game, I think Janemba being a technical character makes a lot of sense, and he's super weird and all that, so I think it would work perfectly. As for what some cosmetics would be, I already talked about, what is potentially his intro could be. Maybe he could also nullify if they don't want to go the hook route. Maybe one ability could be nullified. Janemba is a very weird moveset in Fusion Reborn, so you could do a lot with him. So I think very interesting to see what route they go with him. Maybe his MVP could be him breaking the sword. He picks a little fruit, makes a sword out of it, and reverts, and then he laughs. Maybe that could be his MVP. Who's to say? But with that is all 6 characters I want added for Season 4 Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra. To recap, I already closed out the tabs because I was having great issues with my computer. Super Saiyan 2 Gohan and God Vegeta as damage. Jiren and Android 16 as tank. And Fusion Zamasu and Super Janemba as technical. That's my list. Let me guys know down in the comments what you guys want for Season 4. And while you're down there, if you want to hit the subscribe button and Hit the bell so you stay notified with everything for Season 4 Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra, because any new updates, I will be making videos of it. So if you want to stay up to date with everything Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra related and stay up to date with everything Season 4, make sure to stay subscribed to the channel. Once again, shout out Stray McCall for the background music. I'll leave a link to this video in the description as well, so make sure to send them some love. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!